So yeah, Canada.
Canada.
Talk to me about Canada. Well, let me pose the questions.
Okay.
Why Canada?
It was either going to be America or Canada, and I just chose Canada. It wasn't any particular draw, really. I had done some courses at college, some horsey courses, and I got really fed up and I became really disillusioned with it, and I actually got in trouble at college for being rather rebellious to my tutors and questioning what they were teaching. I saw one of them riding on a video once. We were supposed to be assessing how well a horse jumped over a jump. It's scope, it's called, how it moves itself over a jump. This man just beat his horse with a whip all the way to the jump, and the horse refused to jump, and so he beat it all the way around again and forced it to jump. And he was asking us questions, and I said to him, all that horse is learning is that if it jumps over the jump, you're going to beat it. So yeah, I got in trouble for attitudes like that, but I stand by them. But it was because of that course we had to do like a practical placement as well, like out in the world. And I wanted to, I was learning about natural horsemanship, like Monty Roberts was quite big at that time, and how to work with horses and how to fix messed up horses, because there are many in the world. And I've actually found quite close by a remedial horsemanship, natural horsemanship yard near Hamilton with these people, Mark and Morag. They became a really big part of my life for a long time after the placement. I kept going back to them. They adopted a lot of Monty Roberts' methods, but also expanded on them and developed their own. And Morag had said to me, you should go and see how the cowboys do things. So I thought, yeah, I will do. You know, I'd finished college. I'd just been working in a cafe basically, and serving coffees and things, which was all the rage back then.
Didn't you work in the cafe where J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter?
Yes.
No, I said Harry Potter then.
Harry Potter.
That was from London. I mean, Harry Potter.
She actually wrote it in Black Medicine Coffee Company on Nicholson Street, and in Marchmont. There was a branch there in Marchmont at the time. And the reason I know she absolutely did is because the owner, Roger, who was the best boss I ever had, really cool guy. Roger was married to J.K. Rowling's sister, so J.K. Rowling would come into the coffee shop and...
What time period was that when she was writing that?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, she'd have been writing that in the 90s, wouldn't she? And it was published in the early 2000s.
She was writing it before I worked there.
Yeah.
But she would still come in. So yeah, I took myself... I went to the Calgary Stampede in Alberta for a couple of weeks and introduced myself to some ranchers. The people that I ended up befriending had a ranch, a hobby ranch, and I ended up working in a vet's there to sustain myself. So I had kind of the best of both worlds. You can get a year's working holiday visa, basically, if you're under 30. It was a company called Bunac. So I had to save, maybe it was like 1,200 quid, something like that, to pay for the year's visa and to go over there. And I ended up staying for 4 years. So after the year's visa was done, my employers at the vets essentially sponsored me, and I could stay on.
So, I mean, obviously you didn't go for citizenship or anything like that, but you just had an extended visa.
I got residency.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I did get residency. But that'll have expired now. I think you have to update it every 5 years or something like that.
I don't think you'd want to go back to Canada now.
No, I don't think I would. I got homesick in the end. Because I lived right in the Rockies, it's just like a mind-blowing place to live.
How long ago was this that you were there? When did you first go? 2000 and...
It was the late 2000s. The people were all absolutely lovely. The little mountain town I lived in was just a really nice place to be. The Canadians can't be more helpful, and they'll do anything for you. But everyone's sickeningly athletic. Everyone's a triathlete. It just makes you feel inadequate.
When we were younger, before my father joined the army, they were thinking about emigrating to Canada. Don't ask me. I think it was just there was no prospects where we were, so because we were living in Grimsby, but it never came to anything. But they were. I do remember them saying to me at one point that they did consider emigrating to Canada.
I think as a Scottish person, I got a warm reception because they're all into their Highland games. Well, no, they are in some parts of the States as well. I think they found my sense of humour, my dry sense of humour, difficult to get used to. But they did get used to it eventually.
I think a lot of people on the channel find our dry sense of humour. Sometimes they don't know. Well, I'm just going from the comments, what people say. At first, I think they constantly thought that we were both having a go at each other all the time.
We never argue.
No.
Just not something we do. But yeah, it was incredible. I loved the old ghost towns. I loved the sort of frontier buildings and the fact that, you know, they just lift up buildings and move them there. And I remember when I was coming to the end of my time there, I was not only homesick for family, although I'd been back and visited and they'd visited me. I was homesick for old things. There are some old frontier buildings and things, I say, but in Banff, I think they dragged one of these old frontier cabins into the middle of the town and made it into a museum. And you know, everyone marvelled that it was built in 1910, and that just for me, you know, coming from Scotland with the heritage that we've got here, that just seemed like yesterday. So
that's one of the things in throughout the whole of Europe, because it's so old. You can trace history back so far.
But yeah, the style of riding over there is completely different. So I got to ride Western, which I'd never done before, and I love it. I much prefer it now. You've got, the cowboys tell you, you've always got one hand free for beer. So it's such a free way of riding. I loved seeing the horses work, like doing the cow cutting and proper ranch work. Yeah, happier horses, happier riders, much more free. And the cowboys, they'll test you, like to start with, and then you're just one of them after that. They'll have a good laugh at your expense, and then you're just one of them.
Are Canadian cowboys actually cowboys?
Of course they are. It's funny actually, because they don't understand our way of keeping cows. It just doesn't compute to them. Same in the States, just so, you know, such vast ranches, vast amount of countryside that their cattle roam over, and they have to use the horses to get the cows in. There's no other way of doing it. Whereas, you know, they said to me, well, if you don't have horses to bring in your cows, how do you get your cows in? I'd say, well, you just shake a bucket with food in it and then come to you.
And also, cows are very inquisitive.
Yeah, they are curious creatures.
So, is it like Yellowstone?
Yeah.
TV show?
Yes.
I like Yellowstone.
It's very much like that. I was near the ranch where it's called Rafter 6 Ranch. I spent a bit of time there. That's a dude ranch though, so that's just like, you know, they have people come stay and go pleasure riding. There's no cattle there to look after or anything. But that's where they filmed that Marilyn Monroe film, I think, and I think Elvis went there as well. Marilyn Monroe film about ranching.
Oh, with Clark Gable?
I can't remember now.
Sure, Clark Gable's in it. I've got a vision, a picture in my head of Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe in jeans.
Yeah.
And a hat.
And hats.
So it must be. I don't know what it's called though.
The other thing was proper bushwhacking, where we can't do that in the UK, where we're not supposed to. You're supposed to stick to bridle paths, that, you know, set pathways that you're allowed to ride with your horse or on the road. Whereas you can just go anywhere, proper bushwhacking, that you want to on your horse, and you have to actually listen to the horse, because if a horse balks at a trail and doesn't want to go down there, you have to think, okay, well, maybe the horse is picking up something down the trail that I don't know about, like a bear. Whereas in the UK, there are no predators. What's the worst you get? An angry badger.
But could you imagine bushwhacking in Scotland?
You'd get trapped in swamps, wouldn't you?
You can't. It's
too wet.
It is so wild up here. Sometimes I'll be walking around and I'm like, has a human being ever stepped on this?
We got recommended in the comments by somebody a book to read about somewhere nearby over on the mainland on Loch Shiel by a man called Mike Tomkes. The book is called A Last Wild Place. That's quite apt, I think, of this whole environment. It is truly wild, like you say.
Yeah, when I went for that walk around the island, you would never have done it. There were some really precarious bits. I mean, well, you're really hanging over the edge, and you've got a drop on the side of you, which is
can't do it.
80 plus foot.
No.
But it was all the deer trails, and not that anybody is, but if anybody was to get lost in Scotland, if you come across a deer trail, follow it, because invariably they're going to lead to water, or they're going to lead to somewhere else. You know, they're going to lead you out of where you are if you get lost. But that's all I ever do. Over
solid ground, yeah.
All I do around this island is I follow the deer trails, and they're so easy to see. They've never failed me yet, ever. Walking around this island, all I did was follow deer trails the whole way. But you know, some of them are for an animal with 4 legs, not with 2. There was a few points where I thought, you know, I really shouldn't be doing this.
Well, deer bring me back to another aspect of Canada, which was that's the only time I've ever been hunting. So the cowboys went every November down to Coots, the place was called. And it's kind of prairie. It's wide open anyway, but there are these coulees, gullies, that the deer bed down in during the day. And we hauled the horses down with us on a trailer. I'd tried shooting. I was okay with a shotgun, but I wasn't well practiced at all with a rifle, so I couldn't kill any deer. So the boys did that. But yeah, we hauled the horses down, and November, in that area, it was easily -30, -20, -30. Actually, the first day when we went out to cut down our Christmas tree on the ranch, it was -30 Celsius. That's just it's indescribably cold. It's a different kind of cold than Scotland because it's dry. But
2012, we had a massive freeze, didn't we, in the UK?
Mm-hmm.
In Grimsby, where I was living at the time, it got to -22, which is unheard of. I mean, that is like ludicrous weather as far as the UK is concerned. But it got to -22, and like you say, it's just, you go outside and everything is frozen. You can't even walk on the pavements. You can't walk anywhere. You can't get anywhere, and the cold in the air. It is something like I'd never experienced before. I'd never experienced extreme temperatures like that. It lasted for about 3 days. And you can't, in the house, you can't really get warm, even though the heating's on, you've got fires on.
We're just not prepared for it at all over here.
The houses are not built for that kind of weather.
But they are over there, and they've got the clothing for it as well. So when we were on horseback hunting the deer, you're so padded out for warmth.
How do the horses cope with it?
You let them get hairy, and they do. They bulk up over the winter, and they cope fine. We didn't rug them or anything. Like over here, it's you rug them not necessarily to keep them warm in the cold. You rug them so that you don't have to groom them so much.
Do they like going out in the cold? It
doesn't faze them at all, not at all. What we would do is the cowboys would be up on the ridge above one of these gullies that the deer bed down in, and I would be the one riding, because I wasn't shooting. I would be the one sent down into the gully to ride, just walk with the horse up the gully, and that pushes the deer up onto the ridge, and then the boys shoot them. I watched the first shot that we took. I watched how they we call it growling here. I suppose the word is dressing. And you just leave that out on the plains for the coyotes to come and get. So I watched how they did it, and I asked if I could do the next one. And we didn't get the next one until the sun started to go down. And at that point, the boys said, right, we'll go and put the horses away and go and get the truck, and we'll come back and get you with the truck, and so we can haul the deer. And this is all for food for the freezer. This is not for trophy. And you get tags. You can only take a certain amount of deer and a certain type of deer. It's population control. So they all left, and I was left with this deer in the middle of nowhere by myself in the snow. But it wasn't something I did as a meat eater. It's something I thought that I should do this. I should see start to finish. And how I felt about going to the freezer after that for every single bit of steak or every single sausage or bit of mince. You're so connected to that and so grateful for it as well.
Two things. We've experienced that here from the point of view of the water collection.
Yeah.
The way that we collect our water, and this water comes straight from the sky, straight onto the land, flows down the hill, and that's our water supply. But it gives you a greater appreciation of the water, like we've said before, where it comes from and the process of collecting it. You're not just turning on a tap and you're being supplied with this water supply. But the other thing is also, like I've said before, around here the deer are culled. You've met the
local gamekeeper. Yeah.
You've met him, haven't you? You
met his dad.
I met his dad. Yeah, his dad was great, but I'm not comfortable with it. I know it has to be done.
Yeah, it's if it's food for the freezer. It's much more ethical than farming. Than
I agree.
Transportation of animals to a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, I agree. No, I totally agree.
It's because it's a wild creature. One moment it's alive, one moment it's dead, and it knows nothing about it.
The story is Paul McCartney became a vegetarian when they got a pet lamb.
Yeah, they got a lamb, didn't they?
Yeah, him and Linda McCartney got a pet lamb on his farm, which is up here. That was it. That was the point that he went vegetarian. Now, we're not vegetarians, But having sheep as pets, it gives you a whole new perspective on the factory farming that we now do.
Farmers have overtaken veterinary surgeons now in the UK as the number one suicide rate when it comes to job occupation. It's a really tough job, really tough.
Oh yeah, I don't know how they do it.
But because they're commercial livestock, nobody really looks into the psychological needs of the animals like we would do with dogs and horses and cats. So we had to totally figure it out ourselves. What are their actual psychological and physical needs, and just through observation.
The whole process of the way that we get our meat, the whole abattoir with having pet sheep,
I would recommend anybody that's in the UK have a look at the Wild Meat Company online. They're excellent. Their meat is utterly delicious and does what it says on the tin, and they transport everything you buy. You can buy big meat packs from them for the freezer, and they transport it all 24-hour refrigerated, and they're not terribly expensive, especially not compared to all of the food prices going up in the supermarkets.
If you people with pets, normal pets, should we say, cats, dogs, even with horses, if you think of how you treat them and care for them and look after them and understand their personalities and, like we said, their needs in every capacity, and then think that there's any different between cows, pigs and sheep. And I'm not saying this as a vegetarian. I'm not all right on about this. The only way that the farmers can make money is by having massive flocks.
Well, and the subsidies they get from the government, they wouldn't be able to do it otherwise, because the problem started in the UK round about, I would say, it was about probably 2000 that the EU introduced legislation that farmers were no longer allowed to slaughter their own livestock. You have to outsource that to a slaughterhouse now, which means...
We're getting to the stage where we're having to outsource everything.
But yeah, we should be able to cull our own animals like that. That's the ethical way to farm. And to be a farmer providing for his own community rather than...
It's not that I'm not sympathetic to the rules and the regulations that the farmers are now under, and the fact that the supermarkets are just ripping them off. I mean, even silly little things like in the medieval period, this country's wealth was built on sheep. Wool. And those sheep were cared for, and that wool was precious, and that's where the money was made. So to the point that we're now in 2024, we've got to a point where what is a bale of...
Nothing.
It's not.
Farmers are at a deficit. They have to pay for the sheep to be shorn, and they pay more to the shearers than the wool's worth. And how often have we been driving around or going by a farm and there's just a big pile of rotten wool there because it's not even worth them getting the wool board to come and pick it up.
It's insane. I will only wear wool, cotton, linen and leather. That's all I wear. I won't wear any artificial fabrics. And if you think, for the centuries, sheep have provided that wool for all that clothing, and now it's all outsourced. Most of the clothing is made in China, and we've got to a stage now where I don't know how these farmers make any money just from the meat of the sheep alone.
That's why they need the government to give them the handouts.
Oh.
And anybody that's not watched Clarkson's Farm on Prime, give it a watch. Whether or not you like Jeremy Clarkson, you will at the end.
For the Americans, or just people outside of the country, you'll know Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear. But he's got a farm, and Clarkson's Farm gives you a very interesting insight into exactly how farmers across the world are suffering. It's not just over here.
And he kind of started it just, it kind of landed on him, didn't it? Because the farmer that was on his land. His farm manager
left, yeah, so we had to take over.
But he ends up absolutely loving it, and you're totally with him, and
so
it's funny.
The background is to help subsidise the farm itself, and all farms now need subsidising in the UK. He created a TV programme about him taking over the farm, and the pitfalls, the highs and lows of doing so. I mean, even in that, he has to take his sheep, doesn't he, to the abattoir.
Yep.
And he has a real crisis of conscience over doing it.
Yep.
I could never do it. I could never, ever do it. Just because of the way that I view animals. I just couldn't do it. There's no way I could do it. If I was starving, if I needed to feed me and my family, that's a completely different thing. But as it is right now, it's really gets to me. So when did you leave Canada?
About 2000, 2001.
How did you leave Canada in 2001?
Oh, 11, sorry. 2010, 20.
You confused everybody there. Everybody listening to this.
Travelled back in
just
time.
Like, what? So 2011.
Yeah.
And why did you come back?
I was homesick. Homesick for Scotland and homesick for old things.
I don't get homesick. I can understand of having enough, but I don't really. Well, I used to get home. Well, saying that, I did as a kid. I used to get. Oh, you've got no idea how homesick I used to get when we was living in Germany and Northern Ireland and different places, but not as an adult.
Amazing wildlife over there as well.
It's too big, and also claws.
Claws and big, sharp,
teeth.
nasty, pointy teeth.
Yeah, bears, cats,
Things that actually want to eat you.
wolves. You can't just go for a wander like I do around the island.
No, you can't. Not at all. You have to be
Well,
prepared.
actually, that's what people used to say. That's what people were commenting on, weren't they? You've got no protection. Aren't you scared that something's going to get you? And it's like, well, what's going to get us around here? A sheep. The only carnivore that we've got on this island of any size are the pine mines.
Scottish wildcats.
Not on the island,
There will be. They're extremely elusive, but they're here.
but they're not very big.
They're probably Jeeves sized. No, actually, they're more Issa sized, I would say. They're kind of tubby like she is as well.
So they're not going to attack you.
No, but they're bigger than pine marten.
So the other day, I saw a flock of heron. Never seen that before in my life. There was 15. I actually did count them. I disturbed them on one of the islands in front of the cottage. And then we found out that they do congregate in flocks when they're mating.
Called heronries, aren't they? The nurseries that they use.
A flock of herons is a siege.
But they only congregate when it's mating season, and their nesting sites are called heronries.
Well, I don't know if it is. I wouldn't think it was nesting season now. But anyway, there were 15 herons flying over. They flew up from the island. These things look and sound like pterodactyls, don't they? Mm. Well, what we assume. They are massive birds, and when you see that many of them flying, it's like something out of Lord of the Rings. Nazgul flying around.
We also saw, much more up close than before, an otter right outside the cottage.
Sea otter slipped down from one of the rocks outside of the cottage into the receding tide and swam around a bit, popped his head up and down. I saw more of him than you. You did see him, didn't you?
I did saw him swimming.
But we didn't get it on camera. By the time I'd grabbed my camera to film him, obviously gone. I went out to see if I could see him anywhere else, but they are really elusive. It is something else to see a sea otter in the wild because
I've never seen one.
They don't like people, do they? They keep well away from us. So that's the second time I've seen him.
We know they're all over the area. I think it's further south than here is where Maxwell wrote Ring of Bright Water. But that otter, he had adopted it from abroad, hadn't he? It wasn't from this environment. Well, I don't know.
I've never read
maybe
the book.
Subsequent. Maybe that was his original otter and subsequent otters.
I know the film. Is that the one where it gets killed in the end?
Yeah.
That was trauma. My God.
I
just thought. Imagine a kid. Most people, are kids when they see that film.
Yeah. It was highly traumatic for me as well. We were told that one of the previous caretakers here found an orphan sea otter and raised it in the cottage, and it was a pet until it became too big and too terrible, too much of a terror to... They became afraid of it. I don't know why. A bit too big and male ottery, so they encouraged it back into the wild.
Oh, could you imagine? I mean, it's like it's a wild animal. Fine, it's like fine when they're babies, but a full-grown male otter with those teeth and those claws.
I worked in the Edinburgh Vet School at one stage, in my veterinary career, and we had all sorts of exotic wildlife coming in there from zoos and things like that. And we had an otter once, and you could smell it all the way around the hospital.
So it stink.
It just smells like fish. But then if you raise it in the house, it's not going to smell like that, is it? But you would want it to be out swimming.
Yeah, but do you remember with Brie how we would... In fact, I found those photographs, didn't I, recently, of you were giving her first bath or washing her down. How long did that last?
Not long.
You can't keep them clean. So she's massive. Brie is a really big sheep.
She is this big breed.
She's like a small horse.
Well, they bred them tall, right, so you can get in under them to milk them.
She's stocky. She's like a big sheep. Yeah, okay. They are slightly overweight. They're slightly overweight, but we don't care. We never had a vet say there was anything.
Make them lose weight.
No. It's like let them live their best life, and if that means being a little bit overweight, then so what?
They like their grub. So do we all.
Well, what is the worst thing about Canada? You said what you actually miss.
The winters.
They are that bad.
6 months of snow. And a month either side of that, it's just brown. Everything's brown. They don't have, when it snows here, it's a few days of snow, and then it melts, and then the green grass is still underneath it, whereas everything's dead over there underneath. So that was quite difficult. I also got altitude sickness, because where I lived, even on the valley floor, is so high above sea level. So yeah, that was difficult to get used to.
Do you realise that we're only 3 months away from daffodils?
There's crocuses first, and then snowdrops not far away.
Edelweiss.
And round these are your parts.
I guess we haven't got the climate, have we? Bavaria. It's
alpine, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot further south than we are here, even though it's high up in the altitude. That just comes to mind because we watched Sound of Music again for the what?
Millionth time. It's so lovely and wholesome and idyllic, though, isn't it?
Yes, I don't mind watching those old 50s and 60s musicals at all. Okay, well, we're going to have to wrap it up because time's ticking on.
All right then.